When will the prisoner be brought in? A chubby, elderly, bespectacled man was pacing around the lab with a mobile oxygen tank on his back, constantly sucking in what he hoped was pure oxygen. His bald head, framed by dark hair, shone brightly in the lamplight. Colleagues jokingly called this hairstyle Lenin's, and urged her to shave off the scanty growth. Technically, he's no longer a prisoner, but the subject of experiment number 4, his younger colleague replied. I don't care. At least call him the savior of the world. The main thing is that in case of failure, it can be eliminated without any problems. Professor, you've become bloodthirsty, said the girl, who was currently staring at the microscope. How can you not be bloodthirsty, Nastenka, when— Not Nastenka, but Nastasia, these are different names. The girl looked up from the microscope and stared at the professor. Oh, if I were younger, I wouldn't let those nostrils flutter in anger. The professor sighed. Are you going back to your old ways? Nastasia frowned and went back to work. Do you know what I'll tell you, colleagues? This is not genetic engineering. At least, I do not know of a laboratory on Earth that would create such a thing. I'm betting that this is a natural mutation. Man did not interfere here. Everything is too smooth and homogeneous. Just think, the professor looked up from the oxygen mask. And this is being said by a man who is himself the fruit of genetic engineering. And here you are wrong. Nastasia jumped up from her lab chair and walked towards the professor. She was taller than him by more than a head and a half, and when they stood side by side, the professor's gaze was just at the level of her chest, and, probably, that's why he never looked away from her. Yes, my parents are the fruit of genetic engineering, but they only eliminated the errors accumulated in the code. And anyway, that's not what you're thinking. We need to understand who did this on our territory and why. Ian, is there any information from intelligence? No, Stasia, replied the same scientist who had corrected the professor. And who cares who? Problems with flora on all continents, in all countries. And it doesn't matter which country the dragonfly came from, or what its nationality is. Maybe she's even an alien creature. Why the beast at once? Nastasia turned around and went to her microscope. Professor, can you stop staring at my ass? No one will give you anything here anyway, given your age, which you hide by saying that you are only 69, although my grandmother remembers you perfectly. You taught her. Ian covered his face with his hands and laughed soundlessly. You and Ian are lucky, Nastenka. You are a GMO, and I have to undergo rejuvenation procedure once a year instead of vacation. And so I want to fly to Greenland with chicks. They say the natural environment is still preserved there. I'm really tired of hearing about your libido. You'd better think about the experiment, Nastasia grumbled. Ian, have you collected the samples? Yes, I've already done everything. Ian nervously wiped his glasses. From the original bush, from the mutated tree, and from experiment number 3. What do you mean? Nastasia jumped up in her chair. He was destroyed. Yes, but for the record, a sample of foliage was taken from the victim's body and preserved in dried form for history. Stop, stop! Nastasia jumped up to Ian. Did the sample sprout from the herbarium? The dry kind? Well, yes. Ian nodded. Why am I the last to know about this? Nastasia flared her nostrils and furrowed her brows. She tried to show her anger, but Mom and Dad chose such a beautiful face for her that men, no matter what she did, only admired her. The professor said that it's unnecessary to report to you. Oh, did the professor say? And in the last 3 years you've been in this lab, you haven't been able to understand that a professor can only think of one thing: to blow someone. He is considered a scientific star in this job, who, alas, made the last discovery about 30 years ago, long before I was born. That old stump can't think of anything anymore. But it has connections. And I would have you if you weren't so smart. The professor sighed and jumped on the spot from the squeaking lock of the opening door. An armed guard entered, carrying a container the size of a tall man. And here's our lab rat. The professor rubbed his hands. Idiot, Nastasia sighed. If you snarl, you'll take his place, the professor whispered, turning to the girl. You've already got me. I'll pour a cocktail into you and get a vine on the way out. She's so smart, slender, and busty. Nastasia froze in place with her mouth open. The professor jumped up to the container and unlocked the lock. The door opened and the girl couldn't believe her eyes. There was a beautiful male sample in the container. Oops, the girl sighed. The clone was sent. This is not a clone. A policeman without insignia on his uniform approached her. It's a man. Moreover, without genetic changes as ordered. We found one who served in the army. Receive and sign up. In the army? Nastasia started reading the document on the tablet. We have an agreement that we conduct the experiment only on prisoners sentenced to death. We can't take a soldier. There's no problem here, the policeman chuckled. Everyone in prison has been GMO for a long time. We were looking for that too, and we wiped our feet off. No. He is not the only natural person, but the only one whom we were able to convict of crimes in the last war. Nastasia was surprised. This is the war that we had with Europe. Now we have peace there, but we condemned him as having fought with our allies. Weren't we all fighting against them then? That's it. I also fought in the war, and now I serve in the police. The policeman winked at Nastasia, examining her breasts. But you needed a prisoner, didn't you? So they found the right person, and found what they could be sentenced to death for. This is somehow wrong. Nastasia was flipping through the pages on the tablet. If you don't take it, it will be disassembled into organs. The court worked in vain. A healthy specimen. It's amazing. The policeman looked at the prisoner with envy. We'll take it, of course. We'll take it. I'll just send him a medlist to study. Nastasia sent herself the necessary information from the police tablet, left her fingerprint and returned the device. Put it please on the table in the A-lab. It's behind glass. She pointed to the laboratory on the right. Undress him? The police unwrapped the container and took it to the laboratory. Of course. The police took the man out of the container, roughly stripped him and laid him on the operating table, said goodbye to the scientists and left. Ian fixed his arms, legs and torso, thought about it, put another retainer on his head, and put a sheet on his hips. He came out of the laboratory and, passing Nastasia, who was looking at the military, bumped her shoulder. We'll have a break in 15 minutes, Ian said to the girl who turned to him. Can we have a quick lunch and get started? He's going to sleep for another hour, the cop said. Good idea. The professor jumped up to them. Semolina casserole with mango and chops of cellular meat are in the dining room today. Nastenka, I was in a restaurant recently. Grabbing the girl by the elbow, the professor led her to the exit. So they served steak with blood. You know, it almost tastes like 100 years ago when I was a kid. I'll definitely take you if you do this experiment well. Oh. Nastasia rolled her eyes, following the professor into the dining room. I work for a piece of meat. If you see the price tag, you'll know it's true, the professor snapped. The girl looked back, but Ian wasn't behind her. Listlessly picking at the casserole, Nastasia looked out the dining room window. The plants have already taken over all the free space, and the city and the region have sunk into an impenetrable layer of alien flora, to a height of 3 meters. The first 2 floors of the Science Center building were already without windows. The plants were squeezing out the glass, and people had to close the windows with armored shutters. No one was walking on the ground now. Everyone was moving through the air. Most of the people lived in hastily built reservations, where the military fought the flora like a natural disaster, burning out a protective cordon daily. This happened all over the world. Those who did not manage to evacuate died in captivity of the plants. It all started with the fact that in broad daylight in the park, at the opening of a monument to endangered species of animals, a large dragonfly flew in. A species unknown to science. The dragonfly was the size of a pigeon. There are many photos and videos of this moment. A dragonfly flew from flower to flower planted under the monument, and everyone was delighted that she was posing, allowing herself to be photographed. By the time the scientists arrived, the insect had flown away, and then the mutations started. Someone had filmed this dragonfly earlier with a spike of an unknown plant in its small paws. What are you thinking about, Nastenka? The professor finished his chop and began to eat dessert. Not Nastenka. I'm thinking about the dragonfly. The one? The first one? How delicious. The professor chewed on the casserole. The Americans evacuated residents from Salt Lake City and dropped bombs on the city, he said in a whisper, leaning over Nastasia. It was 2 days ago, and today, the young growth of this dragonfly was observed from the satellite. The trees are still small, but they are growing at a crazy rate. The traces of the explosion remained only on the buildings. Do you understand what a plague this is? It's not in the news anywhere. Nastasia was indignant. And it won't be. The world does not need panic. If you get good experimental results today or tomorrow, you will go to Antarctica with me instead of my ancient wife. Do you understand me, Nastia? Yes. The girl swallowed her indignation. Ian came running. Nastasia pushed her casserole towards him, and she went to the laboratory. The subject began to wake up. His breathing became deeper and was no longer as steady as before. He sometimes panted a little, and his body, restrained by the straps, twitched. Nastasia smiled and carefully peeled the Band-Aid from his mouth. She stared at the parted lips. She licked her own. She freed his left arm and pulled a medical sleeve over to the table. I fixed my hand inside and selected a program to take blood for analysis. The man groaned from the puncture made by the robot. Be patient, handsome. Nastasia put her hand on his chest and heard his heart beat. Where did you come from? From the eco-village, came a low, hoarse voice. The girl looked at the man's face, lips parted, slightly smiling, unshaven black-like hair, brown eyes, fluffy eyelashes. Oh, is there even such a thing? Nastasia bit her lip and turned away to look at the indicators. What's going on here? The military man asked. Don't pretend you don't know anything. Nastasia raised her voice. You are a war criminal, sentenced to death, given to scientists so that your body can serve science. Are you shouting to convince yourself of that? Yes? Look at me. The last thing I remember is that I was in the cafeteria, and something stuck into my shoulder. Can you explain to me what happened? The prisoner. Egor. My name is Egor. What about you? Nastasia turned around, opened her mouth, and immediately closed it. She turned away from Egor and stared at the indicator screen. I see. Would it be easier for you if I was a faceless patient? That's right. As a soldier, I'm telling you. Just tell me one thing. What was I sentenced for? For the war before last, roughly speaking, no way. We just need a non-GMO person. That's all your fault. Nastasia looked into Egor's face. He was lying wide-eyed and staring at the ceiling. So if nothing happens to me, or you need to repeat the experience, will you come for my family? Nastasia suddenly realized that this was so. If it's any consolation, it's for the sake of saving all of humanity. How pretentious, Egor chuckled. You're shooting white crows. Not like you. There is nothing human left in you. Why conduct experiments on clean people if we are already a statistical error on this planet? The experiment has already been conducted on people like us, Nastasia said angrily. And what are the results? Can I find out? No, Egor, you can't, the girl screamed. We are dying from mutation and there is no escape. Maybe the planet itself is fighting you? Egor came up with the idea. Maybe a planet. But it is important to find out. Will clean people survive? Why would you do that? There's no way you can go back. Well, we'll see about that. We need a vaccine against mutations. I need to get a biomaterial from you. Now I'm taking blood and then... Are you jerking me off? What? The girl grimaced. No! And what do you call a biomaterial? What you thought. But there is a device for this. A milking machine, like for cows? Egor laughed. Vulgar, Nastasia protested. The medical sleeve beeped, and Nastasia turned it off, freeing Egor's hand, and he immediately hugged the girl around the waist. Those sentenced to death are given food at least if they wish. What's your name? The girl was standing pressed against a laboratory table, on which a military man was fixed. Egor's hand began to sink lower. Nastasia tried to twist away, but the grip was firm. You're so beautiful. Blonde, blue-eyed, plump lips, even teeth, and look at me. Egor showed her his teeth. Fangs, and the bottom row. Some into the woods, some for firewood. But that doesn't stop me from kissing well. Do you want to try it? Egor smiled, and Nastasia jerked in his hand with all her might. You smell good. I can hear it even from here. I want to bury my face in your lush hair. Kiss your neck. Listen with my lips to the pulse beating in your neck. Go down to the chest. You have magnificent breasts. You're a work of art. A masterpiece created by science. I want to kiss you so much. Gently bite your lip. Lick your earlobe. Egor, stop it, the girl said. I haven't started yet, the guy protested. One of three things. I'll let you go if you do one of three things. Kiss me, or show me your breasts, or tell me your name. Choose one. And if I lie? Lie. Or do you still want to show me your breasts? No, the girl snorted. Well, that's right, because I'm already ready to collect the biomaterial. Nastasia squinted to where the body was covered with a sheet. The fabric towered over the body, showing that the guy had not lied. Nastasia reflexively swallowed her saliva, and Egor grinned. Maybe a blowjob, though? Nastasia bent down and slapped Egor in the face. The delicate skin of his palm was burned by a man's stubble. Shh. Does it hurt? Let me kiss you, Egor suggested. Let go. One of the three, or do you like that I'm hugging you? Nastasia, the girl said her name. It's beautiful. Egor released her, and she quickly moved aside. My killer's name is Nastasia. You bastard. If you swear, you'll have to work with your hands to put on the milking machine. Fuck you! The door opened, and Ian's shaggy head popped out. Stasia, I put a virus in the computer, he whispered, and prepared 2 ampules. Why 2? The girl was surprised. Our professor is clean too, Ian chuckled. You do all the work, and he gets the money. Maybe then we'll just do an experiment on him? Yes, he has so much chemistry inside. He has extended his life 20 times. Let's prick the suicide bomber in him. Let's say that he accidentally ran into himself. You came up with this cunningly. Egor's voice rang out. Is he awake? Ian asked. Some dumb scientist, Egor remarked sarcastically. Suddenly. Egor, we don't have time to conduct a dozen experiments. Nastasia turned to him. We're continuing our experiments. The professor's cheerful voice rang out from the laboratory. Where's my mask? Put on your spacesuit quickly, Ian commanded, and he and Nastasia rushed out of the laboratory. Egor reached for his head with his free hand. My fingers found the fasteners. It's tight, but there's a chance. The professor walked around the laboratory and breathed in what he thought was pure oxygen. Nastasia and Ian were pulling on protective coveralls, helping each other. And what about our prisoner? The professor went to the laboratory. Ian quickly pulled on gloves. Nastasia handed him a helmet, and he opened the box, picked up a syringe, and stepped inside after the professor. The girl put on a helmet with a protective mask on her head, and heard screams from Laboratory A. Quickly pulling on gloves, she took a second syringe. The professor was lying on the floor. Ian stared at him absently, and Egor tried to unfasten the lock on his chest with both hands. Ian, Nastasia called. The guy woke up and turned to her, saw the second syringe in her hands, took it away and stepped towards Egor. No. Nastasia, please. At that moment, Egor unbuckled the safety lock on his waist and sat down. The holders remained only on the legs. Ian inserted a syringe needle into a vein in his ankle. Egor jerked, reached out to Ian, grabbed his glove, but the green stuff managed to get into a vein. Ian jumped back, but Egor still had his glove in his hands. Bitches! Egor roared. Stasia, help me! Ian grabbed the professor by the legs and dragged him out of the laboratory. Nastasia pulled out the medical sleeve after him and managed to rush out of the laboratory, blocking the door. Egor was a few seconds late. The girl looked around. A handsome young naked man stood in the transparent window of the laboratory. Stasia! Ian was shouting from the laboratory. Stasia tore her gaze away from Egor with difficulty and went to Ian. They both quickly undressed the professor and strapped him to the table. We made it! Ian rejoiced, looking into the computer when they both left the lab. Nastasia sat down in her chair, took off her gloves and helmet, and looked at Egor. He wrapped a sheet around his hips, sat on the table, and looked at the scientists. "How do you feel?" Ian asked, taking off his helmet. "I feel betrayed by all of humanity." Egor looked at Nastasia without taking his eyes off her. "But you must understand that this is all for the sake of science." "Listen, Four Eyes, shut up. What kind of science? You are a private shop that has received a government order. Science has long been just a business, and all your discoveries are not for the sake of all mankind, but to make even more money. You won't make it. People can no longer walk on the ground, travel only by air. In the army, I was engaged in burning this mutated forest so that it would not devour people. A little more, and the plants will destroy the water supply, power plants, and all the benefits that humanity has won for itself. You are no longer human." "It's anger talking to you." Ian took off his glasses and began to wipe them with shaking hands. "Stasia, lie down and get some sleep. The mutations will start soon. You need to be rested." "Stasia, how can you sleep after everything that happened between us?" Egor asked. "What happened?" Ian perked up. "Oh, my bespectacled killer, you missed a lot. Stasia let me hold on to her bulges. We would have had sex if you hadn't intervened with the short, bald man." "Is that true, Stasia?" Ian curled his lips like a small child, offended. "Can't you see that he's provoking you?" Nastasia asked wearily. At that moment, there was a groan from Laboratory B. The professor woke up and twitched. "What's going on here?" "Help me." He tried to pull away, but the restraints held him securely. "Professor, you ran into a syringe with a substance, and we had to fix you." "If it comforts you," Ian said in a monotone voice, "then your life will serve science. You will die like a true scientist, giving your all to people." Egor burst out laughing. "What kind of bitches are you? Hey, Baldy, he gave you a special injection. You got him, you bastard. Did you get attached to Stasa in his underpants? Or not just to her? The old lecher? Help me!" The professor gasped and coughed with a gurgling cough. Brown saliva flowed from the professor's mouth. "Stasia, look at him." Ian leaned against the glass, trying to get a closer look at what was happening. "It's dried blood," Nastasia waved away, turned around and went into a small room, the door to which was hidden behind a laboratory cabinet. Birds that Nastasia had never seen before were flying in the window above the endless mutated forest. Perched on a narrow sofa, she closed her eyes and fell into an uneasy sleep. In the dream, Egor's hands caressed her body, and she hugged him and tried to tear off the wings that had grown where a person should have shoulder blades. "Stasia, wake up," Ian shook her by the shoulder. "The professor has eyes the size of avocados." And the hump behind his back. The eyes were really huge, faceted like those of a dragonfly or other insect. The skin turned green-gray. Something clearly grew behind his back, and the straps of the holder broke the professor's ribs. He was gasping for breath. Brown foam was coming out of his mouth, and convulsions were going through his body. Nastasia looked at Egor. He was lying on his side, facing them. His skin also changed color. The slit of his eyes widened, and he was asleep. She looked into her computer and switched the image to a camera mounted on the ceiling. Egor had wings on his back. Not like in her dream, but wings. In general, he lost weight, became thinner, but not much. "And how do you like me?" came a voice from the laboratory. "How are you feeling, Egor?" "What is it?" she asked. "Egor. Why not a test subject? What did the professor call me? A lab rat? Did you hear everything?" Nastasia was surprised. "Yes, but I couldn't speak. They injected something like that into me. It's even amazing that the penis stood up." "I'm sorry, Egor," Nastasia said. Egor sat down abruptly. The wings on his back twitched, but did not open. The eyes became large, bigger than the professor's. Now he looked like he was wearing glasses. The nose has shrunk, and now only the eyes and lips stood out on the face. "Forgive me? Bring me back to my old self and I'll forgive you." Nastasia turned around and went into her small room. "You know, Ian, the building is obscenely quiet, and while you were knitting your boss here, and then you were dozing on a chair, helicopters kept coming and going here. If your computers are connected to the network, then the right people are watching this video. And as soon as the evacuation is over, a bomb will be dropped on you. Why? Ian asked, blinking his eyes in disbelief. Egor laughed. That's what they always do. Run to investigate. I bet there's no one in the building anymore. Ian lost his temper and ran out of the lab. Nastasia! Egor hammered on the glass. Just listen to me. She was silent, but he could hear that she was still there. Egor walked around the laboratory, and everything was securely secured. Nastasia, run away from here. Save yourself. I don't see the point. The girl appeared from the room. Should I die now or a little later? Come to me, since there's no difference, Egor called. Let's at least get high one last time. She laughed in response. He folded his wings, closed his eyes, and pressed himself against the glass. Stas, Ian ran away. The professor died. We're all alone here. I have wings, Stas. I will save us. Nastasia laughed again, but her laughter turned into tears. You're hysterical. But there must be an instinct for self-preservation. Let's fly away. The wings spread out behind him and lifted him up behind the glass. You remind me of an angel, or the main male dragonfly. What will a male dragonfly look like? There's no time for jokes anymore, Stasia, Egor said seriously. The girl went to the door, hesitated a little, looked out into the corridor. But seeing no one there, she opened the door. Egor slipped out, grabbed her by the hand, and led her into a small room. He opened the window and jumped onto the sill. Nastasia reminded him of herself. He spread his wings and went out the window, falling down. Egor! Stasia shouted. He flew up from below, picked her up, and flew away from the building. She wrapped her arms around his neck, trying not to interfere with his wings. The blast waves stunned them, crushed Egor's wings, and threw them into the mutated forest. They fell into the thicket. Egor pressed his wings tightly against himself. Once in the thick of the foliage, they stopped falling. The leaves clung to the girl and she struggled in pain. Egor let go of her and looked at her mutation. The beautiful white skin was torn by budding buds, and branches began to grow out of the girl. I'm sorry, Stasia. It didn't work out, but nothing. You will all become living flower beds for a new life. I will come to you sometimes and admire your flowers. Climbing out of his native forest along the branches, Egor soared into the sky and flew in search of his own.